Hello, everyone. It's so good to be here. Welcome to Lipedema Wellness Conversations with Gail. That would be me and friends. And our friend today is the nutritionist, Carrie Reedy. But I think she's more than a nutritionist. I think she's a mom of many, a nutritionist and nutrition advisor for many, and a very dear friend who I haven't actually been able to see recently because she has been busy and I have been busy. And so I am really glad to see our lovely Carrie Reedy. And I would love for you, Carrie, to introduce yourself.
Well, first of all, let me just say, I know it's evening for you, but it's good morning from the other side of the world. As Gail said, I'm a nutritionist. I'm really passionate about helping the lipedema community. I feel so strongly that we're just under-acknowledged, under-recognized in terms of medical resources helping to support us. And so I feel like as a grassroots movement, it's a wonderful community and a wonderful way of really progressing our understanding about lipedema. And I feel really blessed to be a part of this community and to know amazing people like you. And I've missed you too, just so you know. It does seem like ages since we've spoken.
It does. I know that we probably spoke about 3 weeks ago, but often we talk. There are days that we talk daily. It seems like,
multiple times.
three or four times a week. And most of the time, when what we're talking about is how we can help our community and how, as part of a coaching collaborative, that we work together. And you have been doing something pretty spectacular recently with our community in small group coaching. And when we talk about small group coaching, how small group is it, and how big group is that small group? I mean, can you explain a little bit about the small group coaching program that you're involved with?
Sure. So our small group coaching kind of came out of a conversation that a couple of us in the coaching collaborative had, where we kind of we're just really wanting to understand how we can reach more people in terms of helping more people. Not everyone can afford one-on-one coaching. I think we're living in challenging economic times. And so we've created this opportunity for a group of up to 6 people to join together. And we meet twice a week and we talk through how to implement nutritional interventions. And so whilst, I guess, overarching all of that is how to support people to move into a ketogenic way of eating, it's really, we work out where we are where we are starting, and we work about what the next steps are. And for some people during the program of small group coaching, which runs over about 3 weeks, some of them want to jump in both feet on day one. They're like, give me some instructions, tell me what to do. I'm going to the supermarket. I'm getting everything I need and I just want to do it. For other people, they need to take a bit more of a kind of a slower, like more baby steps. And sometimes it's just moving people from what we refer to as the SAD diet, the standard Australian or standard American diet, but our Western world way of eating, we move from there to more of a real food, whole food way of eating. And for some people, that's a stretch. So we focus on that first, and then they keep taking baby steps and say they may move to a low carb way of eating, which is typically, depending on who you talk to, under about 100 grams of carbohydrates a day. They get comfortable with that. And then they take that next step where they're like, oh, okay, now I'm going to test out, does keto really supercharge what I'm already doing in terms of eating in a lower carb way? And so it's a really, for me, it's a really fun experience. I mean, I get to meet with not just one amazing person, but 6 amazing people that are really interested in, working out how their nutrition impacts their expression of lipedema, what's happening with their swelling, what's happening with their pain, what's happening in terms of body composition. Are they feeling less fatigued? Do they have more kind of almost get up and go? And it's been wonderful. It's actually been probably one of the funnest experiences in all of my career, because we're doing it together. And I think there's some real magic about doing something that's hard but doing it with a group, because you've got each other to bounce off. We have a private Facebook group, and we see each other's, people are supporting each other, sharing recipes, sharing ideas, sharing all sorts of things. And as much as one-on-one coaching can be helpful, I just think there's an extra bit of magic in small group coaching. And so it's lots of fun.
And we have Susan in our audience today who says small group coaching is so helpful.
Oh,
So
yay, Susan.
um, sometimes what happens with small group is that it's different than just reading it online or one-on-one even, is you make a friendship. You have a connection, and you get to actually not feel like you're out there by yourself, right? Making life changes is
Yes. It's hard.
it
It's hard.
is.
To be honest, changing our way of eating, changing our lifestyle, changing other things, it's really hard. And so if we can do it with other people that are going through similar things, we feel less isolated. And I think, the elephant in the room, acknowledging that lipedema in and of itself is isolating. Often it impacts our ability to get out and do all the things that we would like to do, depending on the stage. And so by doing something online together as a group, we don't feel quite so isolated. And we have lots of laughs, which is really fun too. So yeah,
and
it's good.
and we've discovered that even though you might not be able to always make each meeting, we record them for the people inside that group to be able to go back in and touch base. Or maybe you don't feel like you caught everything
Mm,
through the coaching session, and you go, I want to see that again. Carrie said something, or somebody over here said something, and I kind of missed it. I want to go
mm,
back in, and I want to, talk about it again. And so that's that support. And small group coaching is something that you do for, like you said, about 3 weeks.
mhm.
You're going to so the group that you're in right now is going to end next week?
So we'll go through to the end of next week. Yes, but the support in the Facebook group continues, and like you said, you get to re-listen. We meet twice a week. The first sort of session in the week, there's a lot of content. It's really we sort of lay out how to step into this process. The second time we catch up during the week is a bit more of a Q&A, but it's usually based on the questions that that particular group has, so that we can support everyone as we move through this process. And you're right. Sometimes you're busy thinking about what's previously been said, and you're like, oh, what, did I miss something? And so it's great to be able to sort of listen back, and even 3 months down the track, when you're like, am I tracking well on this? Maybe I just need to go back and revisit all of the things that we've talked about. That information will be there
Oh,
so
that's
people can.
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, right now we only have two people who are willing to say, "Hey, I'm here." So we have Marilee. She is from the Pacific Northwest, which I'm sitting up here, not quite so Pacific Northwest, but Northwest, and it's raining. So I'm almost, I'm wondering how her weather's doing there, Marilee. And then Susan is also here, and I can't remember quite where she's from. But if you are watching us, throw a hey shout out to us in the comments, so that we can see who's all here and who's paying attention this morning, and or this evening, or whatever. The time change messes with us, doesn't it? Because you don't change
Mm.
your time.
I
And
probably live in one of the only places in the world that doesn't seem to do daylight savings. Apparently, there were some issues that the cows couldn't work out when to be milked with daylight savings, so we just got rid of it. I don't know. Maybe that's where so I don't know.
yay, cows. So Susan's here from Florida. Hi, Susan. And Terry's here from Virginia, and I hear it's windy over there on the East Coast today, windy and whatnot. I have a person who's in Virginia. She's in, let me see if I can remember, Aldi. So it's in by Chantilly. Anyway, Loudoun County, Virginia. So Hi, Terry. It's good to see you too. So, anyway, now we've talked about small group coaching. Carrie, what else are you doing right now for Lipedema Simplified?
Oh, I've just gone down the inflammation rabbit hole. I'm presenting at the upcoming
Wait
Heart
a
to
minute.
Heart.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. You didn't say
No,
information hole. You
in-
said,
inflammation.
oh,
Inflammation.
inflammation rabbit hole. That's a totally different rabbit hole.
Absolutely a different rabbit hole, but I'm presenting at the upcoming Heart to Heart on inflammation in lipedema and also the benefit that our change in dietary approach can make to that. So I've probably been in the weeds in terms of reading research papers, but I'm trying to kind of bring it right back because I want to make my presentation really practical. I want people to go away from the Heart to Heart event feeling like they have some practical strategies of things that they can do moving forward, rather than just feeling like the head's exploding with a whole lot of research papers. So, yeah, it's been really interesting to think about, particularly the ketogenic diet. And we often talk about why it's anti inflammatory and how it's anti inflammatory, but we don't really go into why. And I'm a really big advocate of understanding why. Not everyone wants to go as deep and understand that, but I feel like for me personally, if I understand one, why something happens, and two, why certain interventions can help, it kind of cements in my own mind why, the benefits of something. And I find it much easier to adapt to it and stick to it, rather than just, if, that more airy fairy, like, hey, this is good for you. I think that's beneficial. Now, not everyone likes to get as sort of technical as maybe someone that has a background in nutritional medicine, but hopefully we can translate that into something that is really understandable and practical.
And that's you saying that not everybody likes to go down into the weeds and down the
Mm,
rabbit hole as much as you, but I find that the lipedema community, so many of us have been dealing with stuff for so long that we're
mm,
like, okay, I don't want snake oil. I don't want any. I want to know. I want answers. I want solutions. I'm willing to research this. I know there's no magic pill. I know but I really want to know this information. I find that so many members of our community they
mm.
want to know the reasons why something
Yeah.
works.
And I
They're
think, yeah, absolutely. And I think for, particularly in this community, I, I use the word gaslight kind of, lightly, but, for often we've, gone to, our medical providers and said, help me understand this. And we're pretty much sort of um, told that, you've just, eaten too much and not moved enough, go home, eat less, exercise more. And we've been told, um, that we've sort of bought into some of these sorts of things. And I really think understanding some of the weeds of all of this helps us realize that it's not our fault, that there is certainly a genetic component to this. There is an environmental component to this. There's likely, inflammation is playing a significant role, but we need to think about, why is my body inflamed? What is driving this inflammation? And as we come to understand all of these pieces of the puzzle, it really does help us get clarity on what interventions are going to help and what interventions are, like you said, snake oil, like promising the world, but not really delivering. And ultimately, the thing that we know about that is there is no one size fits all solution for this condition. And so, what works for one may not be necessarily the right intervention for the next, because the driving factors are likely different. So,
right. And we each have our own genetic expression.
mhm,
I think you used the term expression earlier. How does something create our lipidemic expression, right? The how we
mhm,
express our lipedema, um, which I've talked to several. I talk to people all the time since I'm the community manager. I talk to a lot of people, and I don't my lipedema looks totally different than other people's
mm,
lipedema. Even my daughter, her lipedema doesn't look like my lipedema, right?
yeah,
And
it's fascinating, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, but yet it's still there. We're still there, and I remember asking my physical therapist before I knew what I had as lipedema, I said, Why do I have all of this fat behind my left arm, my left elbow, and,
Mhm.
between my shoulder and my left elbow?" And you know
Mhm.
what? The only thing she could tell me was, "Well, it looks like that's where you store some fat."
Like, I realize that. I want an answer. I want an answer that explains this to me.
Give me a reason. And
Yeah.
and that's and that's what we wanna know in our community. We wanna know what's going on in our bodies. We wanna know how we can make changes if
Mm.
possible, you know?
That's a really interesting point you make. I do quite a bit of genetic testing with my clients here in
Uh,
Perth, and what I haven't done so much with those with lipedema, but what I see is we all have, just based on our genetics, very different ways of managing. Take just inflammation for instance. Some of us will have genes that, for the exact same environmental insult, we will make a lot more inflammation than the next person. And that's got nothing to do with whether we have lipedema or not. That's across the board. Some of us will have more inflammation producing genetics. And then we also have genes that help us regulate that inflammation, because inflammation in and of itself is beneficial. It kind of helps the body do some of the functions that it needs to, but we want to be able to kind of get the inflammation, it comes, and then we kind of can put a lid on it, and it sort of goes away. Often what I see, and I know with my own genetics, I have a lot of genes that upregulate inflammation, and I don't have very many inflammation lowering genes. So I end up with this kind of, I have to do more to lower my inflammation than the next person, because my genes don't tend to do that so well. So I have to intervene more in terms of dietary interventions and potentially some supplemental support to help with that process. And I think that's true for a lot of internal processes in the body. We have different capacities. And so, you mentioned before that your lipedema expresses different to other people. There's potentially some underlying genetics that's saying this area is your Achilles heel, but in another person's, their Achilles heel is somewhere else. But either way, it's those same underlying drivers that are contributing to it. It's just how it presents in different people is going to be unique for them.
right. And so when you talk about dietary interventions, it would be like when my husband tells me, "Yeah, I know that you can't eat cake." And he goes, "But I can." And I just wanna
Yeah.
but he used to say things like, "Gail, you know you shouldn't be eating this." So
Mm.
so it was almost like a scold, but
Yeah,
he's really
that's kind of a slap, like,
yeah.
no, no, no.
But over the course of 44 years of marriage, he's learned to be different. But one of the things that he says to me now is our metabolic health is not the same. So in his brain,
Mm.
it's about metabolic health. So he has so my metabolic derangement is different than his, is what he's telling me. So, but I think he does it to make himself feel good. Like, "Oh, I can eat the cake because I'm not as metabolically deranged as that girl over there."
Mm.
And, but I think we're starting to understand that since each one of us are so genetically different, that we're gonna have
Yes.
different genetic expressions. And when you talk about inflammation, that's another
Mm.
maybe I'll give him that word now instead of
Yes, and
maybe
even just our own metabolic processes are regulated by our genetics, and so, yes, his I'm just gonna say his metabolic what word did you use? Derangement. May not
derangement.
It may not manifest as lipedema, of course, because, there's various other factors that aren't at play for him, but there still could be some areas there, and his Achilles heel is in a different place, and it's affecting him in a different way. And so, it's not like we can kind of go, everyone else is okay. We got in our cards, our cards got dealt and we got the dud cards. That's not the case. It's just
No.
it is different for everyone. And maybe we have something that's more obvious, we can see it. Whereas for other people, we often refer to, thin on the outside, fat on the inside. That's, it doesn't, just because their body composition isn't showing that there's some sort of biochemical process going on in the background that's causing some compromise, it doesn't mean that it's not. I think for all of us, we can consider the role that our food choices make, and our food manufacturers, they're not so interested in our health. They're interested in selling products. And so, we're working in a tricky environment already to try and eat in a way that's going to be beneficial for our health. I think
Right.
it really is. It is like climbing Mount Everest. I often talk to people like that. It's like trying to change what we're doing in the world that we live in. It is, it's a very hard task, but it's doable, and the results are worth it, in terms of, for us with lipedema, moving to a less inflammatory way of eating, potentially keto, because we can see a lot of benefits. And that's what I'm going to be talking about, why keto is anti-inflammatory. But, they can make some profound benefits to us in terms of less pain, less swelling, changes in that body composition. It's those things are worth it because they improve our quality of life, and they improve our mobility, and they improve the long-term trajectory of what this health condition can potentially, the ways it can impact us.
Right. And when you talk about keto, um, if I remember correctly, you're not talking about the blanket fit in the box keto that we find on
Mm,
the internet necessarily. You're talking about a kind, gentle way.
yes, kind, gentle,
Uh,
and really bringing it back to real foods. We want to be eating those foods that are full of lots of nutrients. For many, many in our community, we have a lifetime of potentially dieting and restricting. And I don't think I've actually ever come across anyone with lipedema that doesn't tick the box that says, have you tried lots of diets in the past? On my intake form, I actually sort of ask, what have you tried in the past? And it's usually, they're like, there's not enough space in the box to list all the diets that they've tried. And it makes sense. Of course, we're going to naturally want to do what we think we can to impact this, especially before we have a lipedema diagnosis. We don't understand why our bodies may look slightly different to other people's. And so there's been potentially a lot of restriction in the past, which, over long periods of time can lead to nutrient deficiencies or insufficiencies, or even overt deficiencies. And so by going back to eating real food, we've actually got all the nutrients in the food, rather than the processed food that's so prevalent in our grocery stores, that are so devoid of nutrients because of their processing. So we eat lots of real food. We focus on filling our bodies and just re-nourishing ourselves. And we do that in a ketogenic way because of the benefits that the ketogenic way of doing it has on lowering inflammation in the body. So yeah, it's slightly different to what you may find if you just start Googling, keto. That's a whole nother rabbit hole. And often people go down the dessert rabbit hole with keto. And, that in and of itself can, we just try and replace all our, favorite treats with keto treats of the same. But, there's nothing wrong with an occasional treat, but we want to be focusing the vast majority of the food that we're eating on food that's just going to, re-nourish us and give us all of those nutrients that we need. Our bodies are a machine. And if you don't give it the right inputs, or it doesn't have all of the right factors it needs to do its job, various processes are going to become compromised. And, that's the way we do it. And there are some quite subtle nuances between the way that, typically keto is done and what we know is beneficial for lipedema. And sometimes even then we have to start at one place, but we have to play around with it. I think you've found that cream just doesn't really work with you. And yet that's like a favorite keto food, And
it's
so this
a
is where
magnet. Cream is a magnet. It's like a
Yeah,
or a or maybe it's a megaphone, "Eat me, drink me," for
yeah,
me,
yeah.
and yet it doesn't do me any good
There's
whatsoever.
a very interesting thing about foods that we're for instance, if they're an inflammatory food for us, that means for us personally, our immune system has flagged them as being a problem food, but we eat them. Part of that inflammatory response initially is like a euphoria. So we eat these things, we feel like, oh yay, my world, it's like the rainbows have come out, everything's amazing. And then we sort of dive off the other side, where once
Right,
the inflammation starts to rev up, we don't feel so good. And so this is what keeps us in this cycle because we feel so good when we eat them initially and then it causes some issues later on and that's where we have to play around with keto because just because a food is a darling of the keto world doesn't necessarily mean it's a darling to us and our particular immune system. So
right.
it's always looking at it from a sense of curiosity about how am I responding to this particular food. Do I feel good? Do I feel good and then bad? What's going on in my body? And for you, it's been a bit of trial and error working that out. But it's good knowledge to have, isn't it? Once we work out
Yes,
a particular food isn't our friend, we can
yeah,
then try and find some alternatives that aren't so problematic for us and still,
right.
we want to enjoy our food, all those things.
Yeah, and I think that that's what makes, um, the way we approach keto or at least nutrition different than there are so many diets out there that I mean,
Mm,
we can't even it's a multi-billion dollar industry, the diet industry
it
is,
is.
and and what makes it so different, the way we approach the nutrition factor is with the curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
not with, "You will eat this, you will keep it down to this amount, and
Yeah.
all of your troubles will be over." And that's not how it works, right? It's like, "Okay, I've discovered that this particular food gives me that euphoria."
Mm,
And then it gives me an additional pound and a half or so of swelling, you know,
yes.
or
Yes.
it triggers something else,
Mm,
and another triggers other cravings. So there's all those different things that we look at when we talk about nourishing our bodies
mm.
to the point where we don't even call it the ketogenic diet at all. We talk about keto,
It's
ketogenic.
a way of eating, and I see it almost like in terms of it's the operating system of which we choose the foods that we eat without the overriding thought process being, "I've got to stick to this because I'm jumping on the scales in 3 days' time." I'd actually happily throw scales out the window and encourage everyone else to do it. I know that there's, doctors like this metric, others of our practitioners will want to use this metric, but I find, especially for the lipedema community, that it can be so disheartening. You'll jump on the scales and, you either haven't lost any weight or it's gone up. But we've got to think about the fact that lipedema tissue weighs more. If we get some swelling, that's a lot of water weight that we can eat a food today and put on 3 kilos overnight. That's about 6 pounds, and there's no logic to that because we've just eaten one little thing, but that's the body's way of reacting and responding to inflammation. And so that can be so disheartening. We think, oh my goodness, I've been really trying hard to eat a lot of good healthy foods, things that are nourishing my body, and I'm not getting the results I want. Whereas really it's about, do I feel more comfortable in my clothes? Am I less swollen? Do I have less pain? These are the things that make all the difference in terms of that quality of life. A number on the scales, that can send us, I've seen it many times. Our brains just start going, they sort of go to mush almost when we see a number. And yeah, that's just my little thing. I mean, I don't really want people to throw things out windows, but um,
I
all of a sudden, all these people are going, why are there scales out there? I don't literally want people to do that, but I don't want us to be so focused on numbers. Hey.
Right, right, and I actually took my scales I kissed it. Oh my gosh, can't believe I did this. Uh, 2 years ago, I took my scales, I kissed them. I told them goodbye,
Goodbye, like, bye. I
and I
love it.
and I took it and I laid it on my kid's bed.
Mm,
We were a multi-generational household, and our kids in our house, and I kissed those scales, put it on their bed, walked out of their room and looked at them and said, "Do whatever you want with them." I could
mm,
not put them in the trash. They're a pricey pair of scale, they were a
yes,
really
yes.
they were pricey because they have to be able to weigh a heavy body, and they had to be able to do the adding and subtracting and had to do all this stuff. They were magic smart scales, and I paid a lot of money for them. I just kissed them, and I handed them to them, and I handed them to the bed, and I said, "Take care of them. Do whatever you want. I don't wanna see them again."
Yeah.
I have
And this
no idea.
liberating, has that felt very liberating for you?
Um, it at first it was like, "Woohoo!" And then about a month in, I went through anger and mourning, and I would get up and I'd look at the place in the bathroom where the scales used to
Mm,
set, and I would worry about how much weight I had been putting on, and then I would get through my morning routine, and then I would worry all day long. So I went through like a
mm.
withdrawal, and
Yeah.
and and then it was like, pretty soon it was like the pain wasn't so great. And
Mm,
I realized that what happened for me was I had said, "I am not doing anything different today that I did yesterday. So that number means nothing.
yeah.
What am I gonna do with that number? What am I gonna do with this piece of data? Nothing.
But it
So
can ruin your day. It
but it
can ruin, if you
my
had that
day
piece of
or
data.
brighten my day, and that's what it was. But what am I gonna do with that number? Nothing. A daily
Yeah.
number didn't mean anything. Now I do know that I'm gonna have to ask for the scales back if they haven't thrown them away, because
Mm.
because after my husband's open heart surgery that he's having in April, they've asked him to start weighing himself every day to see if his fluid fluctuates,
Yes, and
right?
so there's some validated reasons for doing that. So yes, don't throw them out, but maybe
So
ask someone to put them somewhere where you can't see them all the
so what
time.
I'm gonna ask my kid to do, my kid has congestive heart failure also, and so what I'm gonna ask my kid to do is either loan dad their scales every day, let dad get on your scale, or or maybe I'll have my husband put the scales out in the garage. Because the one thing, like this, I think constant weighing was part of let's see, I think constant weighing was part of me not trusting my body.
Mm,
That's brilliant.
yeah,
I think
absolutely.
we're not trusting ourselves just to function
Yeah,
without
and I think
seeing.
we can very much determine almost our self-worth depending on a number on the scales, and they fluctuate so much that that can really do a number with how we, how we feel about ourselves on a day-to-day basis, and that, I guess that's my concern, because it's a challenging world we live in. We're bombarded by all sorts of messages, and if a lot of those messages are coming from inside of us about, I'm not valuable because of this particular number on the scales, that's a hard place to be.
Yeah, yeah, and so many of us already know that number is pretty high for us anyways, right? I mean, we already have it on our driver's license, how much we weigh, every time we go to the doctor, they
On
put
your
us on a
driver's
scale.
license? It's on
Oh,
your
yeah,
driver's license? No way. Oh my
yeah.
goodness, I did not know
Height
that.
and weight,
Is that across
height
the
and
board, everyone in the US?
well, every driver's license I ever had, height and weight.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow. Oh, no, we don't have that on ours. No. No, wow.
yeah, and it's just something that we're kind of obsessed with the scale in the United States.
Mm,
So it's really curious because, I look at my if I look at my driver's license, I know it's not my weight. It was my
Mm.
weight. It's not my weight. And I'm like, Gail, what does it even matter? My hair color isn't the same either, right? I mean, my eye color pretty much is about all I got, you know. And I haven't shrunk
Mm.
any as far as height. And she says, I have a lie weight. See, I have a lie weight on my driver's license, but now I'm Becky. Oh, I don't know. So I need a new lie weight. I mean, I don't
New low. Oh dear, yes,
I'm
it's
Becky. So let's see what she
yeah.
says.
Oh,
Oh,
she's below.
below it. I'm like, Becky, that's awesome. I'm Becky. So I just need a new below it. Yeah. So she says below. She's below that weight. So she needs a new lie weight. Well, congratulations on being below that. I don't know if that's a real thing to be congratulating for, even, right? But I'm below it. Well, I'm above it. And uh, so I decided I was below it before when I picked this weight. How ridiculous is this that we pick
Yeah.
a weight, right? And the reason I did it is because I was on the way back up.
Mm.
I was on my way back up when I thought I look more like I weigh this amount than it's the most
Mm.
crazy thing to have to put our weight on our driver's
Yeah,
right. I
that's
know.
that's intriguing to me. There's obviously a reason in terms of being able to identify people, all those sorts of things.
Yeah,
But yeah,
but
that's new to me.
there's a
Mm.
picture. There's a picture of my
Mm.
face on my driver's license. Why does it need to have, my weight on there too? So anyway,
Mhm.
so I'm gonna go ahead. We got way off topic.
We did, didn't we? It's been fun.
So I'm going to go ahead and put in the comments how to sign up for our heart to heart event. It's called
Mm.
a Fresh Take on Lipedema and Lymphedema Solutions, a heart to heart collaborative 3-day virtual community event. It's March 31st, April 1st and 2nd. It's going to run from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern time, all day, all day. And right now there's a early bird special of $97 for the 3 days, which is a phenomenal price for who
Mm.
we have there. Carrie's going to be there discussing inflammation. And find out what she found in her inflammation rabbit hole. And I'm not going to be there. Sorry, ladies, gentlemen. I am going to be on a cruise. I would love to tell you that I would be there in spirit. I don't know if
You're not
things.
even gonna be thinking about us. You're gonna be where are you cruising? You like the Bahamas or somewhere
Oh yeah,
fascinating?
we're going to the Caribbean. We
Oh, wow.
do we cruise with the same family every year. We vacation at least once with this family, and we've always gone on a cruise. It was a private cruise, so it was a private charter, so it was a cosplay. They did a lot of cosplay. We had gaming, tabletop games. We did a lot of author book readings, and it was just it's just this kind of nerd cruise. It's called Joko Cruise. John, if you know Jonathan Colton. Anyway, it's the Joko Cruise, and so we'd go on that year after year after year. And this year we're going on a regular large boat Royal Caribbean cruise,
Oh,
and
nice.
um, I'm a little nervous. Now you're going on a cruise in
I
April, correct?
I am going on a cruise in April, also with Royal Caribbean. No sponsorship or endorsement here, but
No,
I
no, absolutely not.
I look at those ones in the Caribbean and I'm like, "Ooh." But that's the other side of the world to where I live, so I hope you have an absolutely wonderful time. Getting
We
away to the warmth and the sunshine will be very nice after a
we
cold
will.
winter.
Oh, we're done with winter here. I'll tell you, we're so done. But you are cruising to the United States.
I know. I'm very excited. I'm coming to Disneyland. It's like this childhood fantasy. I'm living out my children's dreams. I don't
So
know.
you're not cruising to Disney World, so you're not going to Florida, you're going to California.
California. Yeah. It'll be lots
Oh
of
my
fun.
and I'll tell you what, if I could, I know when you're gonna be here, and if I could, I would take a trip to California because you're just like
Oh,
13 hours down the road from me.
just down the road. Just a
Well,
a little
it takes me a day to get there. I just get in the car in the morning and go. My parents lived in Southern California. That's where I was raised, so I'd be there in a heartbeat. But I think
You've
your
got
time
some other things going on in April and May. You've got some other big things
I
going
do.
on, so
I do. There's open heart surgery in our in my husband's having open heart surgery, and I think I have to stick around. I think I have to stick around for that.
it would be nice for you to stick
Yeah. He goes,
around.
"It's okay, you can go. I can take care of myself." I'm like, Yeah, no."
No.
But yeah, so I really hope that all of you guys, oh, we finally got a heart popped up. That's right. Give us some heart. Give us some lovin's and a thumbs up here and there if you're on YouTube. But yeah, really, I'm really looking forward to seeing how well our heart to heart event does. And we call it that simply because if you hear how Carrie and I talk to each other, we share information with each other, we dig into topics together, and the heart to heart event is going to be the same thing. You're going to be working working, listen to me, working. You're going to be exploring concepts that maybe and solutions that maybe you haven't thought about before with other people who are attending that event.
Yeah.
Um, it would be like if you went to a regular conference and you had a speaker, and then the speaker said, "Okay, everybody sitting at this table, discuss. Okay, everybody, discuss. What did you
Mm,
get from that?" Right? And so well, this is what, did you hear him say that? And you can get to discuss
mm,
things, and then you come back. And so it really gives you the input on your health journey, on what you're listening to, on what you're learning. You get to hear from other people in the community and work in these small groups. It's going to be so much fun. I mean, if you went to our boot camp or you went to our last heart to heart event, you know what I'm talking about. But if you haven't been able to go, it's going to be awesome. And Carrie, I'm so glad you're going to be there with us
mm.
this.
There's
What do
something
you think?
about the power of, and I mentioned this when we talked about small groups, but this is a big group, but there's a power in that group interaction. It reinforces what we're learning. It helps us not feel so alone or isolated in this condition. And usually we make some friends, out of these things that we go on and communicate with afterwards, which is it's just awesome. It is just such a wonderful experience to watch it evolve in every time an event like this happens. It's just, we get such lovely feedback afterwards, don't we?
We do, we do, and I love it because I see people's names. I get to see the people's names on who are making comments and who's here, and right now, and I can tell you that they meet. Some of
Mm,
the people on here met at Heart to Heart
yeah.
in October, and when we did in our first experience with this, because it's not a symposium or a webinar where you go and you listen, like
Yeah,
you have
it's
it.
far more interactive, isn't it? There's some
Right.
real learning that comes from that too.
It is. It's a conversation.
Mm,
Um, it's it's a sometimes you come to terms. We have patient panels. We have where some of our community members are going to come in and talk about their story. We have our nutritionists. We have a body peace coach. We have, I mean, you name it. It's just the lineup of who's coming that we get to interact with.
mm,
That's what's exciting, the interaction. It's not just like, "Oh, yeah, I can listen to this. I can listen to this another day." No, you're gonna get in there and you're gonna go, "Yeah, this is good stuff." Even if
yeah.
you don't talk, you will hear other people part of the communication, right? In the smaller groups, you get to be in listening to more intimate conversations about
Mm,
what they're dealing with, and so it's really a nice thing. Um,
mm.
I hope all you guys get to sign up for the heart to heart. I hope that all of you get to um, reach out to Carrie if you want to. Let me throw Carrie's email address up there again. Um, you can reach Carrie at lipedema-simplified.org. And before we go, Carrie, if there was one message that you would love to have echoed around the world, what would it be?
Oh, just that I think that there's a lot of hope. We've been told that this condition is, that not much you can do, but there is a lot of hope. We have to believe that. And if we just look at the progress in our understanding of this condition over the last 10 years, I'm just excited about what the next 10 years is going to bring for all of us in our understanding of the condition and our understanding of interventions that can help. I think we're on the cusp, and I think that's great news.
Yeah, yeah. And with that, I would like to just reaffirm that hope that we have. There's hope. You're not alone. We are
Mm.
here for you, and we you send us your questions. Talk to us. Know that you aren't out here alone. That we're here for you. And with that, I hope to see you guys soon again. Bye. Thank you,
Take care,
Carrie.
everyone. See ya. Bye.